There's a lot of people from here that are out working part of the union.
Oh, yeah.
Like, did you say Nejas?
Yeah,
He's-
there's a bunch. Like our whole almost Giants crew is the one that does the NBC game.
Yeah.
They're almost all San
That's
Francisco
awesome.
State grads.
Hey, welcome. We're here for the Broadcast Union Seminar with the Bay Area Freelancers Association. We've got two special guests today with President Darren Stevens and Member-at-Large John Marovich. Class of 2010 was in your seats not too long ago. He's here with us. I'm not going to give much away because I'm going to let them kind of talk about what they're going to do, and then we're going to have a question and answer session where kind of like a town hall meeting is the way I see this, is that they'll kind of bring stuff up, and if you hear something that you really want to stop them and talk to them about for a minute, they've got notes and things prepared. We can kind of just have a good conversation, really to benefit you guys, to figure out what are the next steps. If you want to move into the union, if you're trying to do this professionally, how can you get started in the Bay Area specifically? So without further ado, I will just turn it over to Darren and John.
Hi everyone. Thanks for coming. It was a pretty good turnout tonight. I appreciate everybody being here. I want to start with a quote. And first, before I get into my first part of my spiel, I will get into what we do, what our group is about, like what kind of work we do. I know there are some sports fans here and want to know the kind of stuff we do, the sports work we do. But I want to talk about more for now to start about what unions are about, what they do, what they stand for, and just get your perception of what you think they are. I'm not here to sell it to you. I'm here to explain it because I've been president of our group for about 2.5 years now, and I realize we have members who've been around for about 30 years who don't really understand what the union is. So I just want to kind of, because you're going to encounter it at some point probably in your careers. They're pretty prevalent in production work that you guys are likely going to get into down the road. So I want to start with a quote. I'm going to read it to you, and I'm going to ask you who it is because it's not going to be somebody you think it is. It's not what he was remembered for. The labor movement was the principal force that transformed misery and despair into hope and progress. I'm going to let you guess who that might be. Okay. It's Martin Luther King Jr. He's obviously remembered for the civil rights, but not for being involved in labor. He was actually a very, very big proponent of labor, largely because he saw it as a vehicle for equality. It got everyone, all of us, higher rates, a better standard of living, health care, retirement. He just saw it as like a rising tides lift all boats kind of thing. You make one person's life better, you start to make everyone else's around them better too. So that's why he was a big proponent, and that's why he believed in labor unions. And again, as I mentioned a little bit ago, one of the biggest misconceptions is that labor unions are kind of like your employer, and they're not. Before I go too much further, I just want to see if you guys have what you think a labor union is for. What do they stand for? And if you were going to join one, what do you think it's there for? How is it going to help you?
Yeah, it's for like so you don't get overworked by your employer or your recruiter, and just make sure that your rights aren't being violated while you're at work.
Some people in our union do. That's great. That's a good answer. That's what it pretty much is about. It's to get you, we call them wage floors, like so you make no less than a certain amount. We don't want to say minimum wage because the minimum wage is, people think, I don't want to make $15. I can go work tables up the street, So we call it wage floors, like a minimum you're going to be paid no less than. But also, yes, they protect your terms and conditions at work so you don't get overworked. Like, hey, while you're here, why don't you also do graphics and audio? Like, well, wait a minute, I'm only being paid for one. I was only, hired for one. That kind of thing. So you don't get abused, overworked. That labor laws are acknowledged. If any of that is violated, particularly with our contract, we have what's called the CBA, collective bargaining agreement with our employers. If it's violated, it is our duty to represent you and say, hey, you violated it. You didn't pay this person properly, or whatever the terms were, you went over them. So that's what we're here for. And again, one of our biggest selling points for, we do cost a little bit more money, but we also provide trained workers, which is you don't really get anywhere else. You're getting some training here, and when you get into the union, there's also more training where you can either become more proficient at the craft you're already in, or if you want to start making more money. John's the one who brought a good point to me. Unions also exist to make the lives of its members better. Like if you want to move up from, okay, I'm going to start as a utility and I want to become a camera. Well, you're going to make more money and likely get more work, and so on. That's also what we're here to help you do, is to help you get to where you want to go through training programs, and just encouragement and avenues that we can provide to you. And again, our selling points are healthcare and retirement. We have a pension. John was telling me on the way over, his dad's like, gee, you don't really see those anymore. Pensions are really hard to come by. So that's a lucky thing that, not lucky, we bargained for it. I shouldn't say lucky. I don't like that word, because we fought for it. You bargained for that. You go to the table and arm wrestle, the employer or the client, like, hey, this is what we want. So we fight for that. We think that's important and it's worth a battle, and we stand up for it. It's a way to attract people too. I think we all work hard, and at some point when we're done with all this, we want that, that account at the end that we all worked so hard for, that we can retire and say, yeah, I saved for this. I worked for that. That's what we're here for. Just a little bit about our group. We are Iatse, IATSE 119. We represent live broadcast workers here in Northern California. We primarily do live sports, so all the Giants and A's, Kings, Sharks, Warriors you see on TV, that's our folks doing that. And that is one of the questions on the so our parent union is Iatse, and that stands for International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. And so, as you can gather from its name, it started in the late 19th century as basically to protect theater workers. And as theater evolved, and entertainment evolved into motion picture and into television and other things, they now cover people like us as well. They cover writers. They even cover animators for Disney, all kinds of things now. They've become rather large, but largely they are a entertainment union for broadcast, motion picture, locals. So one of the things I had mentioned too, first of all, do you guys have any questions? I went through a little bit of stuff there. I'm talking about benefits and what we do, what we stand for, where our parent, who our parent union is. Do you guys have any questions? Okay. Yeah, and again, I know this isn't exciting, and I'm not trying to sell it, but I just want to, so you guys know when you get in, like, this isn't, like, I didn't hear this before. A lot of our people didn't know it.
What does the 119 stand for?
So, all right, that's a good question. So 119. So, many years ago, before our local existed, we were being abused. We would have clients come in and try to, crew us for shows and say, like, you're going to do it for 150. If you'll do it for 125, I'll give it to you. They would undercut us, and we had no protections. We had nobody, no real contract in place, no union, no organization of any kind, and it was just the wild, wild west out there. So it got so bad that really qualified people were sitting home, and like people who said, yeah, I'll do it for $100. I don't know what it is, but I'll do it. Well, they were working shows. Our group finally kind of organized, still weren't a union yet, and they're like, you know what? There's a Warriors game on November 9th, 1993. Don't take it. Everybody just basically is sick out. We're not going in. We're not doing it. And we did. And the client panicked, gave in, and said, okay, we'll now talk to you. And they did, and we got our first contract. Eventually, it took us another 9 years, and we affiliated with the Iatse in 2002. But the 119 comes from November 9th, 1993, the day that kind of where this group came together. So that's who we are. We were known as the Bay Area Freelance Association, BAFA, but we also represent Sacramento, and we thought that was a little exclusive. We kind of left them out by saying Bay Area, so we now just refer to ourselves as Iatse 119. I guess unless you guys have some more questions, I'll get through this. I know it's not fun. Oh, please ask. Yeah,
They're shy. Just you got to take a long pause.
So you mentioned some of the, I guess, entertainment pathways that you cover. Can you go into that in a little bit more detail?
Get in how a lot of our people came into the sports part of it. I'm just going to go through the union stuff, then I'll tell you how that getting the pathways in eventually lead you to union membership.
I mean, so like what entertainment pathways you cover, so such as like you mentioned broadcast, live events. Do you cover cinema? No.
Our live sports. We're called a broadcast local, but we do are primarily, almost entirely live sports. So again, like if you watch the Giants game on TV tonight, that's our folks doing it over there. We do a little bit of corporate. Apple has some in-house that we were able to get. It's mostly, though, it's almost entirely sports. So that's what we do. There are other locals in the area, and they do like theater or and there's a wardrobe local here in San Francisco. I can't remember the number, but that's here. There's various ones. All kinds of Iatse locals, yeah, that do other avenues. If you want to get in, like I said, they had animators. I think they have writers locals. They have, again, wardrobe, stuff associated.
Our specific local 119 is broadcast sports primarily.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
How would you go about trying to find that like niche local that you'd like to hopefully have a union in? Because it seems like it's like a if you know you know type basis. So it's
I mean, that's a good question, and honestly, I can't speak for how. I can tell you how to get into how ours eventually works, like how you can. I'm not sure. Like, let's say you wanted to get into like one that worked at a news station or something like that. I'm not really sure how they do it. I mean, our requirement is a couple of ways. We have a primary employer. We have multiple employers, but one of them is we work for most of the time. They will they like to vet people and then send them to us, and we have to register them. So that's one way. And if you go to them and you talk to them or whatever, send them a resume, maybe I don't know if they want a reel or something, and they're like, yeah, they're good enough. We'll go ahead and put them on the list, and we'll start hiring them. Another way too is if you work 30 days with that company before you're a member, eventually within 2 years, 30 days within 2 consecutive years, we will then bring you in. We'll say, hey, okay. You've worked enough. Apparently, they like you. You're 30 days within 2 years. You now have to join. That's another way in. I don't know how other ones do it, so I don't want to speak for them. But that's actually in our language in our contract, so I know that's how we do it. But they may have entirely different ways and means of getting in, and I don't want to speak to it because I'm not sure. But it's a good question. I'm sorry, I don't know.
At its best, our local and our employer can also like work together if we know of someone that has a passion for the work and some experience doing it. We can recommend people to the local employer as well. I know that when I got in to the union, I had been working the Jumbotron shows for like the team specifically, and because those crews work around the TV production crews, you kind of get to know each other, and they're good places to start and sort of get a handle on like what working in sports can kind of be like before you then talk to people on the broadcast shows and say like, hey, I'm interested in doing that too.
The work, and you guys go through an employer, so what would be the best way to get into the truck shows for like you said, like the Warriors games or like the Giants games, stuff like that?
The best way to like we were saying to get in is I would start with the board shows, have something you can kind of provide on a resume. We would give you the contact information for Program Productions. PPI is our primary employer. Like they're the ones who crew most of our events that we work. But I would say build up a bit of a resume regardless of where you work, whether it's union or not. Just like, hey, I worked the Giants and the Warriors internship or PA programs, and then I also worked 2 years over at Pac-12 Networks, and and tell them what you're good at, and they should talk to you and be able to bring you in. If they are impressed enough, they'll come to us and say, hey, we'd like you to register this person. Can you, and we'll do it. We'll put you on the list, and once you're on our referral list, our hiring list, they'll start hopefully hiring you. And eventually, once you get in the trucks, that's how you get your face seen. And sometimes you just want to let people know what you want to do too. Like, yeah, right now, sometimes you start at the bottom, right? You might start as a utility humping cable, but let them know like, hey, I want to be in video, or I'm actually a mixer. I want to be in the audio booth, or, but it's a little bit of a slog. And there was a young man from here who contacted me last September, I think, and said, "Yeah, I want to join the union." I'm like, "Well, I'd love to have you, but you got to get some experience first." So what I did is I gave his name to the Oakland A's because I still work over in their board show after all these years, and I said, "Hey, this young guy is really eager, and he's got some good chops from San Francisco State, and I think he's now in their I haven't worked over there yet this year, but he's in their PA program." So I would get into these board shows first, get your face out there, find out what you like to do, and just start talking to people. And eventually approach the union and say, "Hey, can you help me reach out to program productions or whoever the primary employee will be at the time, and we can try to facilitate that."
I would also say one of the best things you can do is just like work on yourself and your skill sets. I'm not gonna lie, this is a competitive industry, and there are people that have been doing these jobs for a long time that either don't want to give them up, or there aren't a whole lot of like expansion in on the various shows that we've got. So if they're happy with a particular person, a particular position, they probably want that particular person to be on that camera for as many shows as they can do. So when I say work on yourself, what I mean is, if and when you get your shot to do that spot, you should be ready for it. And there's no shame in saying, like, I don't have the training for that yet. I'm registered with Program Productions as a camera op. I'm also registered as a TD, and I'm not a good TD. I'm learning that still, and I do some board shows over at Cal, but I get emails from them all the time because they're desperate for new technical directors, and I have to let them pass because I know that I couldn't handle a whole broadcast show. And if I tried and failed, that would haunt me and follow me throughout the length of that employer. So I'm much better at camera, at least currently, and so I have the at least enough confidence to say, like, sure, like, put me on whatever show at whatever camera, and I'll be fine on the other side. But this is a tough industry. It's a rewarding industry, but it's competitive, and you need to be confident in your skill set.
So as a Becca alumni, I know we talked about this a little bit before, but your thoughts about old Becca versus new Becca, and then kind of your path. I know you talked about that a little bit too, but your path kind of from Becca into but your path from Becca into professional, just as a job, like what your kind of path was.
Oh man, well, I mean, when I was in Becca, I took all the production classes I could. Not to dig in on the theory classes, because I took some of them and they were really important, especially for, like, you don't realize until later when you're doing some of the things that you do, like, why, until like you're in it and you're like, oh yeah, this makes so much sense because of that thing that I learned in the theory class. But I took as many production classes as I could, and I gotta say, the thing that probably I took away most from it was working together as a crew, and then networking, like, during and after, because some of the friends that I made have helped me professionally, and some of them I've helped professionally too, where it's just like, I need a guy that I know knows how to do something. And so that's really how a lot of it works, especially at the beginning, but even at the higher levels too. I gotta say, we didn't quite have as nice a studio as this one is. I was over in the Creative Arts building, and this is pretty sweet over here. Gotta say. Oh man, yeah, Studio 3 doing SOE in the basement over there was yeah, you got those windows that move. We didn't have windows.
They're awful, yeah.
We got robo cameras and windows. You guys be quiet.
away from reflective surfaces. They'll mess you up every time.
You had the internship through the Giants. Are there internships through most major sports, and then other like ways that you could get in as a outgoing student?
The Giants have one. I know the Warriors have one. They've got a good crop of PAs this year. And nice. Yep, and the A's got one. I don't think the 49ers have one. The 49ers is a little weird because they've only got a guaranteed 10 or 11 home games a year. So that's the other thing that kind of makes football a little weird, is that for the broadcast side, it's like a 17-week season plus playoffs. And because the NFL is the NFL, there's a lot of set days, and so it's kind of like a weekly thing. But for just the hometown crews, it's kind of just like that's as many days as you get, and so they don't really hire that many PAs over there. But I think they do list one or two a season. So, and then I think the Sharks have something like that.
I don't know, because we've never been affiliated with them at the board show level, but
Yeah.
I think they may have a program, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
So
Before we have some more questions, there's a couple of things I was going to say. Earlier, somebody had said, or John maybe had brought up the point, don't ever misrepresent yourself. I know we're all eager and I'll do anything just to get work. Well, don't say you're something you're not. My story is my very first day at that A's board show in 1992. I just dated myself. They put me on the field as a utility to wrap cable. And they took one look at me doing that, and it was like a pretzel job or whatever. They're like, yeah, you're going to go work up in the booth. you're going to be a graphics guy because you can't wrap cable. So that would be like me saying, yeah, I could do utility. I did it that one night at the A's. I was a disaster. So just know what you're good at, but don't put in for stuff you don't know. And the other thing, unrelated to that, but still part of the business, that the Bay Area, as we know, is an expensive place to live. You're not, while there's a lot of work here because of all the teams, you're still not always going to probably not get enough necessarily. You can find other things to do too, like corporate, and branch out to other things production-wise that may not fall under our umbrella. But be prepared to travel, kind of like Graham said. No matter, even if you live here where it's busy, there just isn't always enough work to sustain everybody all the time, even in a market like this. So just be prepared to travel. I traveled for 25 years, and 20 of that was in hockey weather. So, just be ready for that and be willing. I mean, if this is what you want to do, sports is your thing, or even in broadcast, really, anything you really do in any kind of production, whether it's making movies or even field producing the news or whatever, is going to involve travel. That's just something to take into consideration.
Well, frequently, especially at the beginning, when you guys are going in. I know I worked as a barista, and I worked at Old Navy for a number of years while I was doing my internships, and even after. It took me probably 5 years of working retail after graduating on the days that I wasn't doing production, just to be able to make rent and then make the time to do the broadcast gigs that they offered. Because sometimes they'd give me, most people start off as a utility, just wrapping cable, but a lot of times it'd be 1 or 2 a month, and you can't live off that. So that's what I had the barista job for. That's what I folded clothes super early in the morning for, is because at a certain point I knew that if I just kept doing it, I would get enough each month to pay rent. And yeah, it took a couple years, but now I just do television basically exclusively. And then the union stuff, which takes up a lot of time too. it's more service than it is a moneymaker, though.
But yeah, just he's right. Don't I mean some people hit it off right away and they just sometimes careers just get this lucky stroke and they take off. But others like just be prepared to in anything. You're probably going to start slow. Like I same thing. I worked 2 jobs for 4 years, 4 baseball seasons, until I finally got enough work where I could step away and just do this. So it's just don't get discouraged. But at first it'll be a little slow. It'll be a slog, but it'll come.
Yeah. So, you talk a lot about traveling being a big part of the job, and Graham also said that. I was just wondering, being an international student, is there a lot of traveling overseas? Do you go, or the people that you represent in the union, do they sometimes go to Europe, or people from Europe come and help with the games here?
Let me interject too. The context on this was she was thinking that this stuff is only really applicable to American markets, the way we're talking about the unions and the way that all this is working. So they're exchange students from Denmark, and they're curious, what they can take from this and how, this might apply when they go back home.
That's a good question. I mean, when I've traveled, my international travel was mostly to Canada for hockey games. I did do one event in Europe, but it was not under the union umbrellas before. It was for another company. It was outside. It was not through the local. So I don't really know. That's a good question. I don't know what kind of jurisdiction American locals, if you're talking about that, like if you're a union member here in the U.S. and you traveled overseas, if that would apply. Iatse, our parent union, it's called the International because they do have unions in Canada and the U.S. So I don't want to. This is where I get in trouble because I'm a technician and not a lawyer, but I believe because there are some places in Canada that do have Iatse locals that if you traveled there, your contract would probably be honored, but I don't want to say that for sure. Europe, I don't think so. The San Francisco Giants later this month are traveling to Mexico City to play the Padres down there, and I don't think any of our union members who are going down there are going to be doing it under the union umbrella because I don't think we have jurisdiction there. So I think that. I think it's going to be crewed through the client, which is NBC Sports Bay Area. I think they're just going to direct hire people because I don't think our union has any jurisdiction. Iatse has any jurisdiction down there. Playing in Mexico City. The Giants and the Padres are playing in Mexico City at the end of this month.
Basically the company that's on the fund, not the overall company.
Yeah, but they're not there. They don't have the jurisdiction in a different country.
We don't. Our local doesn't have the jurisdiction, so they're not. NBC is crewing it directly. Like they're not going through us. They're just saying, "I'm hiring you as a camera operator for this much money on these 3, for this series," and they're doing it. It's not through us at all. We don't have any jurisdiction in Mexico because the Iatse is only Canada and the U.S.
I have a question. I have 2 questions, if that's okay. First of all, did you have a lot of knowledge about sports before getting into the sports industry? Do you think that's required?
I always liked sports, but like I said earlier, I wanted to go into news, and so I don't really want to say this, but I will. I'm not a baseball guy. But I work a lot of baseball, and I always, you can put me on a basketball court and hand me a camera and say, cover that game, and I'll know exactly what's going on all the time. But baseball is hard because there are so many stupid rules and so many things that can happen when that ball gets into play. And the way baseball is covered, they've got about 6 to 10 cameras that are covering the event, and you've all got to know what's supposed to happen when that ball gets hit. Like, if there's a runner on base, which camera's covering that runner? Or if it gets hit into the outfield, you've got the camera that's covering the play. But, the thing that always trips me up is the pitcher goes to cover a base, and what camera is covering him if there's an overthrow? So these are things that you are expected to know on camera, and having knowledge of the sport will definitely help you. But again, I'm not a baseball guy, so I gotta learn all these things, kind of like I'll talk to the directors beforehand and say like, okay, what do you want me to do on this camera? And it's definitely like a learning experience. So yeah, having knowledge helps, but it's also not required, I guess. You can often go into shows and go to the director and say, I've never done this before. Tell me what you want this camera to do. And as long as you do that and the director is not too annoyed by that, they'll hopefully help you out. I will say again, I don't want to be, this is my experience. Most of the younger directors that we work with are more understanding about that kind of thing. I've worked with a lot of like older directors though that came up in a different era where the director's word is God. And if you don't do what they say, they will chew you out horribly. And I mean, I don't know a person in the industry that's never been chewed out over a headset before. So you kind of get, not that you get like used to that, but you kind of know when that happens. And, you know, experience is the best teacher. You know, as long as you don't make that same mistake twice, you can usually recover from an experience like that. I wanted to answer your international question though. As far as the union goes, we might not have jurisdiction, but as far as like working in the industry goes, does anyone know who covers the Olympics? It's NBC, right? It's NBC. Well, their local affiliate covers Giants and Warriors and A's. We have members of our union that go travel and do Olympics. It's not through the union, but it is through the same sort of parent company. And there's a lot of back and forth and people that that take that work. I don't know how much y'all want to get into it sort of outside the union.
I was going to touch on that.
Okay.
So, yeah, we don't discourage you from working outside the union. Sometimes you have to make ends meet and you take the work. And there is a lot of that, like where some of us work. When I worked certain Sharks games on the road, I was paid directly by NBC. But when they were here in the area, I insisted on being paid through the local. Because back then, our Iatse contracts didn't travel anyway. And so I would have had a harder time trying to argue to get paid under the contract. So you can't, we're not saying if you join the union, you can't work for anybody else. You can, and many of our people do work for other outlets that aren't under the contract. We'd rather you worked under us, but there's not prohibitive on that. And then I wanted to go back. Your question's like, do you need to know sports? So here's my take, because I've worked up in the Oakland A's board show for over 30 years. My job is to train up there. It's not just to work, to do the graphics position. And I think that's an ideal time to learn the sport. Like, you can do it while you're up there. And I don't mind. Any of you do you know how to score baseball? How many people here know how to score baseball? So a couple. And it's a little bit of a challenge. The positions are numbered, and what kind of, was that a fielder's choice or was that a ground out? Does that count as an RBI or so on? So like you slowly to me, while I'm teaching them the graphics position, I would also take the time to say, okay, so the shortstop he's a 6 on the scorecard. Okay, that's not his number, that's his position. So you try to explain things like how to score a baseball game and how this works. That they get 3 outs when they catch the ball or get the runner out 3 times. That's a good time to learn. There's nothing wrong with not knowing the sport. Don't not pursue it because you don't know. You can also take some initiative. And I'll be honest, when I started, I'm a huge hockey fan. That's my screensaver. That's Bobby Orr, one of the most famous shots in hockey history. Bobby Orr scoring the game-winning goal in 1970. So anyway, I am a sports fan. I came into this a sports fan. So this is part of it, and I love graphics. So it's like an ideal job for me. But as much as I loved hockey, even as a kid, I didn't see it a lot on TV because we grew up in California and there wasn't a whole lot of hockey going on, and it wasn't really shown in the U.S. much until the Stanley Cup final. I didn't know the referee signals for penalties. I literally bought a children's book that showed like what the signals look like because I wanted to know. I'm the one that has to show what it is. So I'm like, so I educated myself. Buy a simple book, even if it's, don't be embarrassed. Buy a a children's book or a simple book with pictures, and that's what I did. I learned the penalty, what the signal, because I didn't know. I didn't know what's tripping look like. What does he do? Kick his foot? Like, I don't know. So you take some initiative, but there's nothing wrong with not knowing the sport. You can to me, I would use that PA program, if you get into one, as a chance to also learn the sport. If you'll find somebody who will take the time to explain it to you, there's plenty of good people who will do that.
I'm from LA, so I wanted to ask if you had an opinion on trying to break into the sports broadcasting industry, whether you tried it in SoCal or if there's just such a big business in the Bay for sports.
So I almost moved to LA after graduating here. And it was some personal stuff that didn't work out. I ended up staying here and doing this one and trying to make it up here instead. I know I've worked down in LA doing video game shows, and it's a weird town to work in because the union presence is so strong. One of the things that we haven't mentioned yet that I wanted to make sure I said before leaving is you can actually be members of multiple unions. Yeah. Multiple Iatses. They're usually tied to a location. But that is not uncommon. The LA one is weird though because there's so much like production that happens down there. It's like every separate position has a union, and it's a very strong union town because movies and motion pictures have been made there for 100 years now, and they organized way before any of us was born, and so their whole process is old. It's I don't want to say old like it's bad, but it is established. And so since I didn't go down there, I hate to give this answer, but I don't know what breaking into that market is like. I know that Iatse does have the ability to like help you move into different unions if that's something that you do. We had a member that came up with me on the Giants board show that married a girl and moved to Salt Lake City, and he transferred locals. I don't know how that process works, but he did it, and now he works Utah Jazz games as well as like not UNLV, but whatever the colleges are.
BYU.
Yeah, BYU. Yeah.
In Atlanta, and then I transferred to 119. I reached out to the business agent I think it was Matt, back when Matt was running this. He was treasurer, maybe. Yeah, I think when Matt was treasurer, I reached out to him, and we filled out some paperwork, and it was a pretty easy process. I just transferred straight from 479, I think, straight over.
So were you asking about opportunities or just like to get in? Like what if you think it would be easier down there, or were you asking about? Okay, so I'll answer that first, then I'll kind of expand on what was talked about. So yeah, as far as also opportunities, yeah, LA for sure has all the sports teams, the 2 NBA teams, the hockey team that we hate, and then baseball team we don't like either. But anyway, just kidding. So they do have sports opportunities. In addition, like as you know, they also, a lot of people that I work with when I would travel with the Sharks down there, who worked Anaheim Ducks and LA Kings games, would also work like game shows and the entertainment, which is also covered. A lot of those people are covered by Iatse. If it's not the same union, it's a different same local. It's a different. But there's a lot of opportunities that way. I know a couple of guys from here that went down there and have done very well. Like they were technical directors and they couldn't really get in up here because people above them were locked into their positions pretty much. and they traveled down there and they did really well. So it's kind of a choice of what you want to do. I know that's home, and yeah, there's definitely a lot of work. How it is to get in down there, I'm not really sure. And the other thing I want to say about unions, yes, Iatse does allow you to belong to multiple locals. However, be careful because some have a residency requirement, meaning you have to live in the jurisdiction to be a member. So what that prevents is like having people live in Hawaii, fly into California and take all our work, something like that. So you may not be able to do that if they have a residency requirement, unless you're going to live there. But yeah, as far as the work choice, it's kind of up to you. I'm sorry, I just don't have enough information about what it's like to get in there, but there's certainly a lot of work down there, and the people I know who've moved down there have done really well.
Two questions. I had one. I just want to clarify something. There's a different local for Sacramento. Is it still 119? It's local
Broadcast sports. There's a local out there, 50, but I think they're more of a stagehand local or something. Yeah.
It's a joke though that you're local and all 50.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
You're local 50.
But they, as far as I know, they're a stagehand local. But the Sacramento, we're pretty much all of Northern California live sports broadcast. Yeah.
So, Professor Carpenter has shown us a lot of badass people from the industry, and all of them has been men, very cool guys. And we also talked a bit about it in class. Like, what are your thoughts on the diversity question amongst the genders within this industry?
So that's why I opened with the Martin Luther King quote, because this has always been a male-dominated business, and I'm not enough of an expert to say why. I see a pretty diverse group here today. I'm really grateful for that. I'm glad there's women and people of color. I think that's great. I strongly encourage it. I don't know. Like, there's no conscious effort to keep that out. I'll be honest with you. I can think of two of our best members who are nationally known, who are probably tops at their positions. There's a tape editor, an EBS operator, and a camera operator. Both females they are nationally known, and they work World Series and big level Super Bowl, big level shows. I don't know. I wish I could answer your question about diversity, but I noticed that I'm noticing a lot of our younger members there is more diversity coming up, and when you look at the board shows and the people who are showing interest, it's getting better. It's very slow, and I wish I could explain it. I don't know why, but I hope so.
We need more women. Absolutely, hands down.
Yeah, we need more diversity. We really do.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not going to hazard a guess as to why it is. But we absolutely do. I know that the Colorado Rockies have a director. Their director's a woman, and I know she's come out here and done college sports. Man, like, she's a joy to work for every time I get a chance. And there's a kind of an ugly history of at least the top of the line jobs being like an old boys club. And yeah. And I think that definitely like contributes to a lot of the problems of like directors being absolutely unprofessional to their crew, is because of that mindset. And so, the opposite of that is more diversity in the workforce. Someone telling someone like that, like, you can't treat me like that. And it's gotten better in the decade plus since I've been in the industry, but it has room to get even better. So yeah, we absolutely need more diversity in our business.
Okay, one more thing. So for these few women that are there, do you think, have you talked to them? Is it, now that it's so male dominated, is it nice for them? Do they, like, in the work environment, is it easy for them or is it hard for them?
Well, I know they have done some of the all women broadcasts, and I know that they're very proud that they've gotten the opportunity to do that. And those broadcasts, I mean, like I can't be a part of them, but they've looked absolutely awesome from the ones that I've seen. Is it? I've heard some horror stories from them. Not to get too dark, but she would probably say have a lot to say. But one of our members was one of Bill Cosby's victims, and has talked about that. So there is I'm sure that they are absolutely proud of the jobs that they do, and should be, because they're all incredible, but they've had to fight a lot to get there. And while that's something to be proud of, like their accomplishment, it's something that they shouldn't have had to deal with either.
So yeah, just to expand, like it's not fair for me to speak for them, but I can't imagine it's been easy. And I know there's some really great a-holes in our business who take pride. Oh, I made her cry. Oh, good for you. You know, that's great. But yeah, I'm not. It's just I feel kind of funny talking about it only because, but I know it cannot be easy. And they had to, like John kind of hinted at, I'm sure the women had to work 2 or 3 times harder to get where they are now than the guys did. So, I mean, I'm not kidding. I know it sounds like it's lip service, but it's really important to me. My terms, I'm going to be out of office here in a little while. Well, they're not kicking me out. I'm just, my term's up. But it was always important to me. We just had a meeting last week with some young people, the board show people that are also our members, and it was a very diverse group. I'm happy with that. I just wish it hadn't taken so long. I feel terrible for how they feel. Must have felt restricted and you know, maybe timid about it because they knew it was going to be a hard slog. But I really hope one of you said that, you know, the change is coming. Well, good. It's about time. So.
My question is a bit too technical, but right now we're learning about graphics, and you're working with graphics. Can you take us through how you're working, if you're doing, or when you're doing a game, how you're working with graphics? Like,
you watch sports much on, like, a lot of sports television? You watch a game on TV or anything? So like what I do is, like, if you watch, I do a lot of hockey. So if you watch a skater, sometimes you'll see his statistics come up, his name, there'll be the team logo and his season statistics. Oh, he scored some goals, and you know, that's me. I usually do that kind of stuff. But what a lot of my job is, I provide content. So you do some research. Like tomorrow, the San Jose Sharks play the Edmonton Oilers, and they have the best player in hockey right now, Connor McDavid. And so I'm going to have some notes about him. Like, he's having a historic season. So I do some preparation. We have access to sports databases and things. So not only do I build the graphics for the show, I also look up the content. So that's what my job entails. And then once the show, leading up to the game, I'm doing a lot of building. That's where I've taken the notes I've culled, and then I build them into graphics. The content I have to do at home, because it's just, you can't do both. Like, you know, obviously you got to have, you're building the graphics or you're researching, but you can't do both at the same time. So usually the content's done ahead of time. So I go in and I just build when I get there. Yeah. I mean, it depends on the sport. A lot of our sports they call them set and strikes. You do them one day. You get there, load your show, build it, do the game, you're done. That's it. But some of the bigger shows, like NFL, like National Football League games, bigger events like World Series, or big network events, you get setup days, 1 or 2 days in advance. You're there, and you're able to build everything and, you know, build it out. But our shows we call ourselves carnies, because it's like the circus. We set up, put on the show, strike, move on to the next town. Literally, it's just set and strike. So. Okay. You're talking too much.
So since a lot of us are nearing graduation and on our last semester, I wanted to ask how, this is a big question, but like kind of how can we get started, but really how can we stay in contact with the local unions within the Bay Area?
Clearly, even though I'm a graphics person, was totally unprepared for the fact that I could do graphics displays here and put. So what I can do is I can give you our website, and I can either talk to you after or just tell you my name and contact information, which is available on the website as well. Our website is iatse119.com. And then there's like a contact us section on there. My name's on there. You can contact me as president. John's on there. You can reach out to us that way. I didn't bring any business cards because I was totally unprepared for anything apparently. So, yeah. If you guys got resumes, or if you guys want to do this again in another, I don't know what, it's up to Graham, but if you want to do this again at some point, it'd be another time where we can kind of keep in touch and we can be regular and get updates and talk to you guys about where we're at with progress on diversity and things like that. And, this was a good feedback on some of the stuff I'm learning and, hearing. And that was a great question about how do the women feel? Because that's a great question. It really is. So this is good stuff for us too. This was awesome. And I wish we'd done it sooner.
Just want to say thank you guys for coming. This was awesome. Appreciate all you guys for showing up. You had a bunch of great questions. I know I kind of like prodded you to make sure you're going to show up and not just be a person in the audience, but you asked a lot of really great questions. We had some great discussion. Even I felt like jumping in too. So really appreciate, I just want to say thank you to Darren and John for being here with us. Thank you guys. You'll definitely be invited back. We'll figure out some stuff and figure out some schedules. I know you're missing the game tonight to be with us. So yeah. So he remember vice president coming to work. President said, "All right, I'll come. I'll skip work to be with you guys." Yeah. No, but we're costing him money is what I'm trying to no, I'm just kidding. We really appreciate you guys being here, and thank you for showing up for this. Thank you, everybody else there. I think you guys are going to hang out for a minute
to
speak, just for if you want someone on. Thanks, everybody, again. We appreciate it.